I see my brother's picture in the local business journal sometimes, lauded as a homegrown success story. They talk about his sharp instincts, his phoenix from the ashes narrative, how he took a failed business and turned it into a community staple. They never mention that the ashes were mine. They never mention that the business was mine, or that the people who handed him the matches to burn it all down were our parents. He smiles in the photos, looking every bit the self-made man, and all I see is the calculated cruelty of a family that decided only one of their children deserved a future. They didn't just pick a favorite, they financially executed one child to benefit the other. It all started with a dream I had nurtured for years, a small artisanal workshop where I would craft custom furniture. It wasn't about getting rich, it was about building something with my own two hands, a legacy of skill and hard work. I spent 2 years saving every penny, working 2 jobs, and living in a tiny apartment to scrape together the initial capital. I wrote a business plan that was nearly 100 pages long, detailing every projection, every market analysis, every risk. It was my life's work before it even began, a tangible representation of all my hopes for a modest but independent life, free from the subtle financial manipulations of my family. When it came time to secure a proper loan for the equipment and the lease, I hit the expected wall. My personal savings were substantial, for my age, but not enough to convince the bank I was a safe bet. I had no collateral to speak of, just a solid business plan and a relentless work ethic. The loan officer was polite but firm. Without a co-signer or a guarantor, the risk was too high. It was a crushing blow, that feeling of being so close to your goal only to be held back by financial gatekeepers. I remember going home that night feeling like my dream was already dying on the vine, suffocated by the realities of capital. That's when my parents stepped in, or so I thought. They saw my dejection and made an offer that felt like a lifeline. They would act as guarantors for the business loan. My father, with a rare smile, said it was their way of investing in my future, of showing they believed in me. My mother nodded in agreement, talking about how proud they were of my ambition. It felt like a turning point, a moment of genuine family support that I had rarely experienced. I was so blinded by gratitude and relief that I didn't see the fine print, not on the contract, but on the faces of the people who were supposed to protect me. My brother, of course, was dismissive of the whole endeavor. He was in his mid-20s at the time, drifting between part-time jobs and grand, unstarted projects, all funded by our parents. He called my workshop a dusty hobby and openly laughed at the idea of me running a business. He'd make snide remarks at family dinners about how I was wasting our parents' time and risking their money. In retrospect, his jealousy was a blaring red flag, but at the time, I just saw it as his usual immaturity, his inability to be happy for anyone but himself. It was a dynamic I was used to, and I was too focused on my goal to let it deter me. The first year was a whirlwind of everything I had hoped for. I worked 18-hour days, covered in sawdust and smelling of wood stain, but I had never been happier. Orders started trickling in, then flowing. My reputation for quality craftsmanship grew by word of mouth. I was paying the bills, reinvesting in better tools, and even managed to put a small amount of money aside. I was finally standing on my own 2 feet, the business not just surviving, but showing real promise of thriving. That success, I now realize, was my biggest mistake. It was tangible proof that I could succeed without them, and that was a threat they could not tolerate. The trouble began subtly, a piece of mail that I almost dismissed as a banking error. It was a notice of a missed payment on the loan. I stared at it in confusion. I had set up automatic payments from my business account, and I knew for a fact the funds were there. I immediately called the bank, my heart pounding with a low-level anxiety. The representative was cold and unhelpful, stating that the payment was rejected and a late fee had been applied. He mentioned something about the guarantor's status that I didn't quite understand, but I assured him it was a mistake and made the payment, manually over the phone, hoping that would be the end of it. A month later, it happened again. This time, the letter was more severe, warning of a potential default. My call to the bank was met with even more resistance. They told me that due to complications with the guarantor's agreement, my loan was now under review. When I pressed for details, they were vague, citing privacy policies. Desperate, I called my parents. My father answered and feigned complete surprise and outrage on my behalf. He promised to call the bank immediately and give them a piece of his mind. My mother got on the extension and told me not to worry, that they would sort out the silly misunderstanding with the bank, but they didn't sort it out. In fact, things got exponentially worse. My credit line with my main lumber supplier was suddenly suspended. They cited a poor report from a credit agency. Then my business credit card limit was slashed without warning. It was like the financial walls were closing in on me. Every source of liquid capital I relied on to manage cash flow was being choked off. I was paying the loan, but the initial missed payments had triggered a cascade of negative reporting that was now strangling my business's daily operations. I was constantly on the phone, trying to repair the damage instead of working in my shop. My parents, throughout this period, played the part of concerned onlookers perfectly. They would call and ask for updates, sighing sympathetically as I recounted my latest struggle with a supplier or the bank. They offered advice that, in hindsight, was designed to make things worse. They suggested I take out a high-interest short-term loan to cover immediate costs, a move that would have buried me in debt. They advised me against contacting a lawyer, saying it would be too expensive and would make me look aggressive to the bank. They were my primary counselors, and every piece of their advice was a carefully placed stone on the path to my ruin. Meanwhile, a strange shift was happening with my brother. He, who had never shown an ounce of interest in my work, started showing up at the workshop. He wouldn't offer to help, just watch silently from a corner, his eyes scanning the equipment, the inventory, the workflow. He started spending a lot of time with our father, poring over documents at the kitchen table. When I asked what they were doing, my mother would just say my father was trying to teach him about financial responsibility. I was so consumed by the stress of keeping my business afloat that I failed to see what was truly happening. He wasn't being taught, he was being coached. The final blow came on a Tuesday morning. It was a certified letter from the bank, cold and impersonal. They were calling the entire loan due immediately. The defaults, though I had corrected them, had breached the covenant of the guarantor agreement. I had 30 days to repay the full outstanding amount, a sum that was utterly impossible for me to produce. The letter stated that if I failed to pay, the bank would seize all business assets for liquidation. It was over. All my work, my savings, my dream, all of it was about to be dismantled because of a series of financial events I still couldn't comprehend. The bankruptcy was the most humiliating experience of my life. I had to stand by as court-appointed liquidators came into my workshop, my sanctuary, and placed auction tags on every single piece of equipment. The tools I had saved for years to buy, the workbenches I had built myself, the raw materials I had carefully selected, all of it was cataloged and valued for pennies on the dollar. I was treated like a failure, a reckless entrepreneur who couldn't manage his finances. The narrative was set, and I was too broken and exhausted to fight against it. I had lost everything, and I had no idea why it had really happened. The auction was a blur of strangers picking over the bones of my life's work. I couldn't bring myself to stay for more than a few minutes. The final sale price for everything was a pittance, a fraction of what the loan was worth, let alone the actual value of the assets. The proceeds went straight to the bank. I was left with nothing but the remaining business debt that the auction didn't cover, a ruined credit score, and a profound sense of shame. My parents offered hollow comforts, saying that some people just aren't cut out for business, and that I could always find a safe job somewhere. They never once took any responsibility. For a few months, the workshop sat empty, a hollowed-out shell that I couldn't bear to walk past. I fell into a deep depression, struggling to even get out of bed. I was hounded by creditors for the residual debt. My parents' financial support, which had flowed so freely to my brother his entire life, was non-existent for me. They told me I needed to learn to handle my own financial mistakes. The hypocrisy was staggering, but I was too defeated to even point it out. I just accepted the new reality. I was the family failure, the cautionary tale they would tell for years to come. Then, about 6 months after the auction, a new sign went up on my old workshop. It was a sleek, modern logo with a new name, but it promised the same kind of custom furniture work. Curiosity got the better of me, and I looked up the business registration online. My stomach dropped to the floor when I saw the owner's name, my brother. He had started his own furniture business in the exact same location, a location he only knew about because of me. The coincidence was too great to be a coincidence, but I still couldn't bring myself to believe the alternative. I confronted my family at the next Sunday dinner, my hands shaking as I held a printout of the business registration. I asked them how this was possible. How could my brother afford the lease, the equipment, everything? My brother just smirked and said he found a great deal on some used equipment and that our parents had helped him with a small loan to get started. He said it was his own idea, that he was inspired to succeed where I had failed. He said it with such confidence, such arrogance, that it made me physically sick. My mother was the one who let the truth slip. She was trying to placate me, to smooth things over in her usual way. She said they were just trying to help him, that he had no direction in life and they saw an opportunity to give him a turnkey business. She said they knew the model worked because I had proven it. We just helped the bank make the process quicker, she said, her voice casual, as if she were discussing the weather. She didn't seem to understand the gravity of what she was admitting. She saw it not as a betrayal, but as a practical solution to the family's problem of my brother's lack of ambition. That's when all the pieces clicked into place with horrifying clarity. The missed payments, the vague excuses from the bank, my parents' terrible advice. It wasn't incompetence or a misunderstanding. It was a deliberate, calculated, and coordinated act of financial sabotage. They had used their position as guarantors to systematically destroy my business from the inside. They had engineered my failure with precision, knowing that the bank's legal machinery would do the dirty work of stripping me of my assets. They had waited for me to build it, prove it was viable, and then they took it. The conversation that followed was short and chilling. My father, seeing that the truth was out, dropped all pretense. He didn't yell or apologize. He explained it to me in cold, rational terms. He said they saw my moderate success and my brother's complete lack of it, and they made a decision to reallocate a family opportunity. He told me that my brother needed it more than I did, that I was resilient and could always start over, while my brother needed a pre-built foundation. It was a business decision, he explained, and I was simply the losing party in a transaction designed to benefit his preferred son. He admitted to calling the bank and raising concerns about my inexperience, deliberately triggering the review of my loan. He admitted to withholding a crucial piece of paperwork that they, as guarantors, were required to submit, ensuring the default would stand. They had weaponized their role as my financial protectors. They used the trust I placed in them to put a knife in my back. My brother sat there silently through the entire explanation, his earlier smirk gone, replaced by the blank expression of someone who had just been handed a prize he had not earned and did not deserve. The pain of that revelation was unlike anything I have ever felt. It was worse than the failure of the business, worse than the debt, worse than the public humiliation. It was the knowledge that my own family had viewed my dreams not as something to support, but as a resource to be harvested for someone else. I was not their son. I was a research and development phase for my brother's future. My hard work, my sleepless nights, my passion, it was all just a test run. They let me take all the risk, and when it paid off, they transferred the reward to him. I walked out of their house that night and have not spoken to a single one of them since. I changed my number and blocked them on everything. The silence from their end has been absolute. There have been no apologies, no attempts to explain. Further, no acknowledgement of the devastation they caused. In their minds, they did nothing wrong. They simply corrected a perceived imbalance, ensuring their favored child was taken care of, and the cost of that correction was my entire financial future. It was a cost they were more than willing for me to pay. Now I work a low-wage job in a warehouse, trying to slowly pay down the debts from a business that no longer exists. My credit is so damaged that I can't even get approved for a decent apartment. Every day is a struggle, a constant reminder of what was taken from me. I see my brother's company vans driving around town, his logo on them, a logo designed to look vaguely like the one I had created. He lives in a nice house now, is married, and is considered a pillar of the local business community. He is living the life I was building for myself. Sometimes I wonder if he feels any guilt. Does he ever look at a piece of equipment in his workshop and remember that it was once mine? Does he remember the condescending way he spoke about my dream, only to steal it for himself? Or has he fully embraced the narrative our parents created for him, that he is a savvy businessman who saw an opportunity? I suspect it's the latter. The capacity for self-delusion in my family is bottomless, especially when it is lubricated by money and success that they did not earn. The most difficult part is the isolation. When I have tried to explain what happened to the few friends I have left, they struggle to believe it. It sounds too cruel, too villainous. Parents are supposed to support their children, not orchestrate their financial ruin. It's easier for them to believe that I must have mismanaged the business, that I am just a bitter failure looking for someone to blame. So mostly I keep it to myself, carrying the weight of this betrayal in silence. It's a heavy burden, knowing the truth that no one else can see. I am sharing this here, anonymously, because I don't know where else to turn. I need to know if anyone has ever experienced something so calculated. It wasn't a crime of passion or a simple act of favoritism, like buying one kid a car and not the other. It was a premeditated financial assassination executed by my own parents. They used the system against me, leveraging their power and my trust to strip me of everything I had built. They looked at their two sons and decided to bankrupt one to enrich the other. The financial impact is obvious: the debt, the ruined credit, the lost income. But the psychological toll is far worse. They have instilled in me a deep-seated distrust that I fear I will never shake. How can I ever trust a business partner, a friend, or a spouse when my own parents were capable of such a profound and calculated betrayal? They broke my ability to believe in the good of people, because the two people who were supposed to love me unconditionally proved to be my greatest enemies, all for the sake of money and favoritism. My brother continues to thrive, his success built on a foundation of my stolen labor and my parents' treachery. They host parties at their house, celebrating his achievements that are fundamentally mine. The local community praises their family as a model of success and support, a testament to hard work. The irony is so thick it feels like I could choke on it. They are not just thieves, they are masters of public relations, having successfully sold a story of a family that lifts each other up, while behind closed doors, they were busy pushing one of them off a cliff. So my question to this forum is a simple one, I guess. When the people who are supposed to be your safety net are the ones who deliberately cut the rope, how do you ever learn to climb again? How do you rebuild a life from zero when you know that the people who put you there are enjoying the fruits of your destruction? I am not looking for pity, but for some semblance of a path forward. Is it possible to recover, financially and emotionally, when the architects of your ruin share your own blood? The lack of justice is what eats away at me every single day.